because he was trying to get Chris Paul to the Lakers, right? The Kobe Bryant Lakers, right? The NBA stepped in and vetoed that trade. I remember that twice. First time in NBA history. Yes. Right. So I was a part of that. I was impacted by that. I lost my contract with the Rockets because of that veto. We had the conversation, like, I don't feel comfortable bringing my child into this arena. They got gambling, dancing, music, alcohol, like everything's there. The kiss cam, right? You name it.
The perception now is they want Muslims giving dawah to our people, to the black people. But we can clearly see that that's false, because your father came through Islam, through an organization, through Sunni Islam, right?
Professor Muhammad Azzuddin, he actually invited the President of the United States to Islam. Writing poetry helped me write other things. Like, I haven't only written poetry books, but I've written curriculums in other subjects. But like, my foundation in writing, getting deep into it was really inspired by just the poetry thing.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of Worldly Life Podcast. Today I'm here with Sheikh Ibrahim Jaber. He's a basketball player. He's a former Division I player. Who had an illustrious career. He has many accolades. He also do poetry. He also an activist. He's also the youth director here in Allerton Masjid. Man, he does a lot, man, for real. And I just want to thank you for coming on, man, for real.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah, it's crazy because you was like highly requested when I first started the podcast. I remember being in the comment section and then be like, yo, you should bring on Ibrahim Jaber. You were one of the most highly requested people to come on. Yet then, alhamdulillah, we here today. But subhanAllah, that's how Allah works. And when I first met the brother, he's very humble, man. He embraced me. He made me feel welcome. You don't see that often now in our community. So may Allah bless and reward you. For real. And please give us a quick introduction. Give us a little intro about your life story.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. And of course, the respect is mutual, and the gratitude as well. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's bigger than the doing it. That resonates a lot with me as a person and just my life journey. So I appreciate you considering me. And inshallah, hopefully this conversation will be fruitful. I guess, looking back on my personal journey, there's certain pillars that I see that have kind of been a part of my life from the beginning, and continue to be a part of my life now.
No.
Of course, faith, plays a major role, which in shaping my identity, shaping my experience. Family, for sure, coming from a big family, who was very, very tight knit. My brothers being my best friends growing up, and mentors and supporters throughout life, and basketball as well, which is a legacy in my family, going all the way back to my grandfather, who played basketball in the army, and even my mother, before she embraced Islam, she played basketball, and she tends to joke that I got my defensive ability from her.
Or
Yeah. So, and just my father, my uncles, they love the game of basketball. And my father used to joke, he said his nickname was right? Because every time he shoot, all you hear is, right, the nets, right?
that's funny.
So, basketball was a big part of my life experience, shaping me into the person I am, and also the believer that I am and aspire to be, if Allah accept from me. And then along came poetry, in my teenage years, and that was something that I gravitated to heavily, and I had no idea what type of impact I would be able to have, with that skill that I just kind of started developing as a teenager. So those are sort of the pillars of my life, and the details are vast, but I want to, I guess, leave it to you to direct the conversation.
So obviously your family was Muslim, right? You say you was a third generation Muslim, so you was born into Islamic environment, right?
So, my father's side, my uncles, from my grandfather, from my father's father,
Yes.
were all Muslim. However, my mother's side, my mother was the only one from her siblings to embrace Islam.
No.
So a little bit of both,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Just growing up. But yeah, Dean was the number one thing in our household growing up. Our bedtime stories was the stories of the prophets,
Yes.
you know, um, uh, and we realized very early on that we were different from everybody else,
Yeah.
in the neighborhood, at our school. When I'm growing up, I'm the only Muslim kid in my class or in my whole school on my basketball team and so forth. So we realized early on that we were a little bit different from everybody else. Um, and you can imagine as you grow up in the society, the different challenges that presents, right? And the tests that comes with that. But yeah, my family has a legacy of Islam that dates back actually to the early 1900s, 1920s. My grandfather embraced Islam through the Adinullah Universal Arabic Association, which was a Sunni organization that was officially established in 1936, like charted as an organization, Sunni organization. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, that was when it was charted. But origins go back, more than a decade before that. We're talking about the 1920s. They actually made hijrah
Yeah.
from the US and they went to Turkey and they went to Egypt,
Yes.
right? And that was before they came back. Professor Muhammad Azadeen came back and actually chartered a Sunni organization on paper, in the books, even, in the FBI reports, right? To that degree, so that was the organization that my grandfather embraced Islam through, in the 1950s, right? So more than 2 decades later, right? And he accepted Islam in Newark, New Jersey, and then he started to learn and do da'wah, and he became the national imam of that particular organization, which led to him eventually doing the janazah prayer for Hajj Malik Shabal's Mount Quran. So that's how he was kind of in a position. It wasn't sort of a random occurrence, but there was Sunni Islam present, right? Vibrant. They had actually colonies across the East Coast, right? In different states, right? But I'm just giving you a snippet into that history, and perhaps another conversation could go into those details. But
Yeah.
uh, that's my legacy, as a Muslim by birthright. Something like that.
Mm. It's interesting that you say that about your grandfather. May Allah have mercy on his soul. That he accepted Islam through that organization around that time, because the perception now is there weren't Muslims giving dawah to our people, to the black people. But we can clearly see that that's false, because your father came through Islam through an organization through Sunni Islam, right?
Professor Muhammad Azzuddin, he actually invited the President of the United States to Islam. All right. So they were very, very active in dawah. They were very, very active in teaching Islam, but the reason that they're not as popular because they weren't very entrenched or apparently entrenched in what was known as the civil rights movement and the social activism movement. And so that's why personalities like Malcolm and even movements like the Nation of Islam and like movements, they're more popular, they're more well known, and people tend to think that whatever is well known is sort of like the original or the only thing that's out there, and so that's probably why there's that type of perspective surrounding the evolution of Islam in America.
And also, last question before we get back to your story. Now, people be saying that around that time, there weren't no Muslims coming giving dawah. The Muslims that would come over, they would get delis from the Middle East or whatever, and then sell our people pork. And they didn't care about the Muslims giving dawah and spreading Islam. Yeah, that's the perception.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not the reality. Um, And again, I don't want to get too technical in the history.
Oh,
But Sunni Islam um, preceded many of the pseudo-Islamic groups, the NOI, the Ahmadiyya movement, you know, and even like, yeah, I don't want to go too deep in it. It's a lot to unpack, but like the Moorish Science Temple is, in their evolution, at one point they were actually practicing Islam, and then there was a deviation from that. And that's actually how Professor Muhammad Azzuddin, who was from formerly known as Lobax Bay, came to the forefront because he said no, right? And he split from that organization. And that's when, he began to come to the forefront of preaching Sunni Islam and then meet Hijra and so forth. So definitely that's a misnomer, that's a misconception. There were people preaching Islam, Sunni Orthodox Islam. Upon Quran and Sunnah, like Professor Muhammad Azzuddin, he actually stayed in Egypt for 5 years. He came back, he was given khutbah in Arabic, right? So he was well versed. A famous jazz musician that embraced Islam. His name is Lynn Hope. Right. He was teaching Arabic with the Dinola. Right. So there was an early present, but again, it wasn't as in your face because it wasn't really deeply entrenched in the social activism and the civil rights movement, which drew a lot of people to other movements because that was the pressing issue at the time.
right.
Right.
Okay, we're gonna segue back to your story. It's very interesting to know. Obviously, that could be another podcast for itself. So let's get back to your story. Podcast episode. But
Yeah, yeah, man. You probably have to get my father to talk about the history of there.
okay, after watching your story on YouTube, I thought it was interesting that you said that your pops took you to Morocco after you won a championship here in the 7th grade, right? Yeah, so walk us through that journey.
Yeah, so I mean, I think as early as I can remember, I mean, it was my dream to be a professional athlete. I would say football was kind of my favorite sport growing up as a kid, even over basketball, probably because I was a little bit more skilled and natural at football. But then as I grew older and other people grew stronger, I kind of grew out of football. But yeah, so I was playing competitive basketball since like the age of 4 or 5 years old. And I was playing with older people and just developing. I got to travel, playing AAU, and compete for national titles. Uh, as early as 9, 10, 11 years old. Uh, so I was on a winning streak. And then my 7th grade year on my middle school team, we actually won the championship, the citywide championship in Richmond, Virginia. And I just had my heart set on going back the next year and repeating,
Right.
And, as a 7th grader, there were players that were in front of me. I contributed to the team, but I wasn't necessarily the star. So I also had hopes of coming back, and playing a leading role. However, that summer, everything changed. My father came to me. I think actually he announced it in front of the community. He was serving as an imam at that time. He was like, "Yeah, we're going to Morocco. I'm taking my son Ibrahim." That was the first time I heard about it. You know what I mean? I've even announcing it. You know,
Yeah.
and, I was inside of myself hoping that, we would never go to Morocco. And I was going back to 8th grade, just my regular middle school life, friends, everything that was familiar. Um, but, as Allah would will, we actually ended up making that trip. And subhanAllah, when we was actually driving to the airport, um, we got in a car accident. Somebody sideswiped us in New York. Right, or some blah, 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 right. But I was thinking like maybe my dua is being answered. Like so maybe we're gonna miss our flight and then something's gonna happen that basically prevents us from going, right? But subhanAllah, it was probably just an opportunity for us to get out of the car, stretch, after a long ride, and then get back to on track to the airport. That's what happened. And we ended up in Morocco for the next 10 months. And it was a life-changing experience. It was transformative. I didn't want it at the time. but I quickly realized when I was there how beneficial it was an experience, and I continue to, um, I guess, reflect upon the qadr of Allah, the decree of Allah, how He was really putting things in my life to prepare me and shape me and develop me. And as it says in the Quran, perhaps you dislike a thing and it is good for you, right? And perhaps you like something and it is bad for you, you know? So it was something that I disliked, right? It was like a proof, that experience, the proof of the verse for me in my own life. Like, yeah, I didn't want it, but it was so much benefit in it. And so what we did there, we used to memorize some Quran in the mornings, after Salatul Fajr, we would recite all the way to Duha time. And then we would have our breakfast and we would go out to the Arabic Language Institute and we would start our studies for the Arabic language. And alhamdulillah, my father also set up for us to have this recreation. So we tried out for the local clubs. In Mohammedia in Morocco. And myself and my older brother Lukman, we both made our respective teams. Alhamdulillah. And if you ask him, and I agree, concur 100%, um, it was those 10 years in Morocco that really changed the course, not just of my
I mean,
life.
10 months?
10 months in Morocco. What did I say?
Yeah.
10 months in Morocco that really changed the course of my basketball career.
No.
Right? Like, that was the time where I had to be the superstar. I had to be the leader. And I got the opportunity to make some mistakes, right? And to learn from those mistakes in a way that perhaps I would not have had I gone back to that championship caliber team, you know? So I developed just as much as a basketball player as I did as a young Muslim, right? In that short window. And, you know, when we came back from Morocco to the States, they didn't recognize us like in terms of our basketball ability anymore. We had taken on, you know, a whole different approach and role in the game, you know. Alhamdulillah. So it was a very, very, very beneficial experience. It was enlightening, like growing up in Southside Richmond, Virginia. It's not necessarily the best environment.
Sure.
You know, I remember as a kid walking around with like, you know, cat guns are.
Yeah.
It's the ones that make the sound, yeah, sound that looks cool. That's where the term cappy comes from, right? The fake guns, right? Uh, yeah, so we used to walk around with those and, you know, just sort of like imitate the people in the neighborhood and the culture and things that we saw at school and on TV and stuff. So psychologically, as a child, I'm preparing myself to basically live and survive in that environment for the rest of my life. Right. But when I was extracted from that environment, yes, and I got to see a different world, the Muslim world, where you hear the adhan, when praying is normal, where you see people with a different type of character and culture and etiquette and worldview, like how that can impact you. You know, this is why I always recommend, especially for young people, you know, to travel, right? See something that's beyond the space and environment that's familiar to you, right? Because it'll broaden your horizon. So not only did we transform as basketball players, we transform as people, you know, through that type of experience.
And also, and when you got back, obviously you went back to school and you started playing basketball. But quick note, I want you to walk us to that process because you know Iman goes up and down. Was you able to maintain that level, or it was like a roller coaster ride for you?
So I would say Morocco was a spiritual high. You know how to compare the came to the person they said to the son. They said, when are we with you? You know, like our iman is so high, but when we go home to our families, you know, we don't feel the same way. They was concerned, like, are we hypocrites? Are we disbelievers? And he's like, no, this is normal. That's a sign of iman, not a sign of a lack of iman. Yes, you know what I'm saying? It's um definitely, Morocco was a spiritual eye. It was probably the most religious I felt in my life up until that point, and for many years after that. Could never really get that experience, that feeling, that tranquility, you know, back for a long while. So I would say I came back. I had to take a few tests basically to go to ninth grade or eighth grade because it was supposed to be my eighth grade year. And we didn't do any study. I didn't do any study a whole year. No, a whole year when I was in Morocco. I don't remember opening one textbook for English, math, science, like social, nothing. And I think we took a couple weeks. We prepared for a test, and alhamdulillah, I placed um, even higher than ninth grade. And that allowed me to just kind of continue on my academic path. And I started off in the ninth grade that following year. My brother was on a senior, and he was the star player on the varsity team. And that year, my freshman year, I only made freshmen. I didn't make JV. I didn't make varsity. I made the freshman team. I was the leader on the freshman team, and it was actually beneficial for my experience. Because when you play on every single level, there's no gaps. Right. You don't miss anything. Sometimes when you skip a couple levels, you don't get the necessary experience that you need to prepare you for the next levels. Or sometimes a person may be on freshman as a freshman, and somebody might be on varsity as a freshman. And then by the time they're both seniors, the one who started on freshman is better than the one who started on varsity, right? Because they just had those opportunities to continue to improve and refine their games. But on varsity, you can't make as many mistakes. You don't get away with as much. And so for me, it was beneficial to start playing freshman. And then I started freshman JV, like that, transitioning. And then we moved up to New Jersey. Yes. Just after my freshman year, to Elizabeth, New Jersey. This was like a homecoming in a sense. I didn't realize it at the time, but that's really where my grandfather had established himself, and built a community, messages, these type of things. So for me, it was an opportunity, despite not realizing it, to really connect with my grandfather's legacy, his work, the community. Most of the people there, they had taken Shahada at his hands, or he did the marriage for them and their wife, that kind of stuff. So for me, that was just sort of like, not fairy tales, but, until I met the people and I saw the community and I lived in, uh, and the way they treated me and embraced me, it was really out of respect right there. And that just reminds me of the Prophet, ﷺ, even after the passing of Khadija, he still would send gifts and show like great respect to her people. You know what I mean? So I kind of like tasted that, like just by being the grandson of Ibrahim Jaber.
Oh, and I could relate to that because I actually come from a noble family. My dad was somebody of knowledge, as well as my grandfather, Baba wives. So I know that feeling where you go to the masjid and they be like, that's such and such son, or that's such and such grandson, and everything. Is a great feeling, and they embrace and they treat you well, and they come start telling you stories like, yo, I remember when your father, I remember when your grandfather did such and such for us and everything like that. I didn't even have people just randomly give me gifts. I done had people just sit down and they just want me to be around because of the impact our forefathers had on them. So it's a beautiful feeling. That is something I definitely want for the children, our children to come and word.
That's why I said, man, I should be interviewing you and not the other way around, man.
That was actually dope. Another time
I got us. We gotta run it back inshallah so we can get more into your story. We have a lot in common, for sure, but there's also some differences. There's never, you know. But yeah, so back to the basketball journey. When I moved to New Jersey, actually, one of my father's fraternal brothers, they kind of grew up under the leadership of my grandfather, right? He was also a professional trainer for athletes. Yeah. Like he had guys that were playing high-level Division I football, high-level Division I basketball, right? Training with him, guys going even to the pros. And he just offered to like do whatever to help me develop, right? Skill wise, body. I was skinny. I was like 140 pounds, 6 feet tall. That's like bucket stuff. I was skilled, so he looked at me. He saw big hands. He didn't see like this sort of like skinny, weak kid. He like big hands, broad shoulders, IQ, right, and skilled, right. And he said, "We're gonna build you up. We're gonna uh, build on your weaknesses. We're gonna build on your strengths as well. You got to put on some weight, and we're gonna get you ready for college."
What year is that?
This is like my sophomore year of high school. For years at like 2000, 2000, right? So I started working out with him, uh, and that really helped me a lot in the long run, understand, how to shoot properly, uh, and just refine my game year after year after year. And I got better every year, but after, even as a high school senior, with having a lot of success, we were top 5 in the state of New Jersey. We beat St. Pat's. If you don't know who St. Pat's is, that's the school that Kyrie Irving went to, Al Harrington with. So, powerhouse basketball. We beat them in the county championship because they're also in Elizabeth, New Jersey. So we met up my senior year, and we took them down, right? The underdog, right? The David and Goliath, and we came out on top. Alhamdulillah. But even after all of that success, I didn't have a Division I offer on the table, right? I didn't have a Division I offer on the table as a senior. I only had like one D2 offer and a ton of Division III offers. Yeah. But for me, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I expected. That's not what I was aspiring for. And so I had to make a decision at that time in my life, and this was an iman. This was a faith decision for me, and I was all by myself, or at least I felt so, right? Your family wants to support you either way, but there was people telling me, just go ahead and take the D3. This is a good fit for you. Take the D2. And I was like, that's not really, so I was uncomfortable, but I didn't have a lot of options.
Yes.
And subhanAllah, min haythu la yahtasib, from where you don't expect, Allah presented an opportunity for me to do prep school, to do a postgraduate years after graduating from high school, to improve my SAT, my academic portfolio, as well as my athletic portfolio. So I made that decision, against the advice of a lot of people, right? To say, now I'm going to tread my own path, right? I'm going to put my tawakkul ala Allah, my trust in Allah. And I decided to go to prep school one more year. And subhanAllah, after Morocco, I would say that's one of the biggest transformative moments in my life that changed the course of my life. Because from there, going to that prep school,
No.
right? Because from there, that was the springboard for me to actually be able to go and play college basketball at the University of Pennsylvania.
Okay. Few things.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, you're right. So, because I could resonate with that as well. That decision you made went against a lot of people in your family.
I wouldn't say family, or your family going to support you.
Yes.
And they're going to believe in you, and they don't really have no choice, really. You know what I'm saying? So like, nah, I didn't feel that, not from my family. So like coaches,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Some of my coaches, some of my peers, who didn't have those type of offers, even, was like, yeah, that's, you should go ahead and take that. So go ahead, finish the question.
So pertaining with that, your family was supporting on your decisions. You decided to be for basketball.
More than supportive, because, they have to sacrifice along with you. I don't got no money. I'm a high school senior, so money had to be spent. So they sacrifice along with me.
Did any of them advise you regarding your career? Because I know you come from a basketball family. Even when you say, "Oh, your brother's playing basketball."
So at the time, my brother Luke Man was playing college basketball at Virginia State. And, he was down in Virginia. I was in New Jersey. So it was really a personal journey for me, which I really value. You know what I mean? I had to make my own decision, but I didn't have too many people trying to force me to go this way or that way. So I value that actually now, that I was able to make my own decision, with the support of my family. But I also had the fortune of learning from the mistakes of people that went before me. Uh, but yeah,
Jamal, inshallah, that's dope, man. I can't say, I wish I could say the same, but I wish a lot of households will allow the child to grow up in life and make decisions and make mistakes and have tawakkul that Allah's gonna bring them back, man. For real, because it's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's very important. So obviously, I work as a full-time youth director. I've been dealing with Muslim youth, in particular, for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I try to emphasize with parents is that you have to let your children choose. It's like Ibrahim alayhi salam talking to Ismail. He's already had the dream that he's supposed to sacrifice him.
No.
Right. But even still, he asked him, what's your opinion about this? What's your take on this? Right. Because we want our children to be independently Muslim, to be able to walk on their own. Sometimes when we take care of them so much out of love and concern, we actually paralyze them.
Yes.
Right. And we fail to prepare them for that day when they actually will have to make that independent choice. Right. And so that's one thing from my parents, alhamdulillah. I feel like they allow me to choose for myself. They never force me in any particular way. Obviously, they advise me, when necessary, but they really let me choose my own path as a young person.
Obviously, I played high school and I also played college basketball. Are we talking about struggle? You know, how was it? How was you able to avoid the fitna that come your way with everyone trying to hug you, shake your hand, and everything like that?
So I would say, in terms of being, we talked about Morocco being sort of the high of my life up until that point. I wasn't really studying much myself as a young person. I was pretty much, whatever I overheard, from my parents, my grandparents, from the community, but I wasn't really like self-motivated about the, you know, and so that's one of the reasons why I never felt again what I felt in Morocco, because I was sort of forced into that scenario and I ended up liking it. But then after that, I was kind of on my own in terms of like really going deeper. So I wasn't, I was, if you see me outside of just like household, I was just like everybody else. All my friends were basketball players, or, they want to be the battle rappers, stuff like that. Like those are the people that are my stable with you, that you hang out, the athlete crowd, football players and stuff like that. And so as a young person, just like so many other young people, you struggle with identity, you struggle with mind you, 9/11 happened when I was a senior in high school. I was a senior in high school when 9/11 happened. So there was a lot of pressure too, just on the Muslim community. And so if you're a young person and you're not really ready to articulate what you believe is, it could be very, very challenging, you know. Alhamdulillah, like I never felt that Islam wasn't the right way of life.
No.
I never felt that there was something else, not that I deeply explored anything else up until that point, but it just felt right, as a young person.
As though if the water pure, you can drink it. No,
It just felt right. You know what I mean? But when you go on to college and you start meeting other people and people start asking questions, you realize how little you know. You realize how much your faith is dependent on the faith that you had in people.
no.
I trust my father. I trust my mother. I trust my grandfather. So it's like you take their word for Islam being truth, just like Christians, just like people of other faith, right? It's really not necessarily their trust in what they know of the book,
Right.
right? Or what they study themselves, but it's their trust in people. This person wouldn't lie to me. You understand what I'm saying? And so when you become a young man and you start engaging in these conversations, you have to go on your personal journey, you know? So, I would fast in the month of Ramadan. That had its challenges on the court, training, 3-hour intense practice, conditioning, preseason, at high caliber level, and not being able to drink, not being able to eat, and still being held to the standards of everybody else. You understand? So that was a challenge, but I felt like those are the things that actually strengthen my iman and strengthen me as an individual. Like if I could do this and compete with them on little to nothing.
Right.
How I'm going to look, when Ramadan is over.
That's so.
You know what I mean? People used to always inquire, even on the professional level, like, how are you doing what you're doing? You know, a reporter, he actually asked me, like, how do you manage on, I really wish I could remember exactly what he said, like, but I'm paraphrasing. He said, how do you manage, you know, um, when you don't have, as much strength? And I responded to him, like, you're not, in a weakened state. You're just relying on different sources of strength. You know what I'm saying? It's your iman that's carrying you. It's your tawakkul on Allah, right? La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. Allah does not put a burden on the individual greater than it can bear, and that's carrying you. You know what I mean? And so you're actually separating yourself from the pack. I mean, by degrees, by darajat, because, if you could do what you're doing while fasting, imagine now when you are able to eat and drink and so forth. And so, fasting was a staple. It's like, you gotta fast. No matter what else you're doing out there, you gotta fast. You know what I mean? And subhanAllah, we had a very active MSA, and I had a few brothers just on campus with me as well that would always be pulling on me to make sure that, at least I'm going to Jumar, or if there's some other opportunity and iftar and Ramadan, they would, try to make sure that I was doing the bare minimum.
Yes, it's crazy because that could take a toll on your iman. Because when you're playing basketball and you're traveling, you're around a bunch of people that are not Muslims. They're predominantly Christians, and everything in your life is pretty much worldly when you're with them. And that could take a toll on you when you're playing basketball, you're traveling, and there's no one around you to remind you because you're around a bunch of people who are non-Muslims and everything is worldly for them. You around predominantly Muslims, non-Muslims, and everything is worldly. It's like it's no deen. And sometimes you are with them more than you are with your family sometimes because you have to travel a lot. So I barely imagine what it could do to your iman and everything like that.
Nobody's reminding you to pray. Exactly. Nobody's checking you if you say something out of line. You know what I'm saying? Um, because that's the culture. you know. So it is, alhamdulillah, I did have one Muslim teammate, Namir, in college.
Yes.
So we would do our iftar. Well, that how it's, yeah, that feels a lot. It's a big difference. So that was cool, man, to have. And I always feel like, Allah put certain people just there for you. You know what I'm saying? So he was one of those people that I vibe with a lot, of just we could connect on D, so just little people, little reminders just to the people that Allah placed around.
Oh yes, I can't even forget to mention that. When did the poetry come in line? Did you start doing it after you stopped playing basketball or while you were playing basketball?
So when I moved up to New Jersey, it was a big separation from family because all my brothers, my older siblings had gone on to college. They had moved out. So I was like the youngest of like the first seven of us.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had like, it really like shook me. Right. It was important for my growth, but I was in like unfamiliar territory because my brothers was my best friends. They was my mentors. So I looked up to them. I followed in their footsteps. You know what I mean? So moving to New Jersey, it was just like a big shift from, the lifestyle that I was living before, family, to sort of just me and my older sister, Saida, rahimahullah, who had special needs. So she had to stay along with my mother, throughout the years. Um, and so one of the things that I picked up at that time, 15 years old, sophomore, is just writing. We just go and I would write, I would hear the kids outside rapping and stuff like that. And I would try to make rhymes and stuff like that. And at that time, it wasn't anything Islamic. I didn't even know like poetry was an Islamic thing. I didn't know that we had history, you know, uh, dating back even before the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, just that culture and how it uh, uh, the virtue of it was braced by the Prophet ﷺ, but he had poets for travel, for battle, to defend his honor. There was different poets, not just Hassan ibn Thabit to combat. Yes, there was to refute, to respond, And he said, "Ayyadaka ruhul qudus." He told Hassan that, may the Holy Spirit, Jibril alayhi salam, right, the angel Jibril, may he be with you, may he support you, right? And so I didn't know about that. I was just kind of like writing, to vent as a form of therapy to get my thoughts out, and I had never imagined that the same pen, that I had then, yes, would allow me to travel the world, sharing poetry, reach millions of people online. That wasn't even my intention. I was just, and my mother used to see some of the stuff I wrote, and it was trash. I mean, and like what you talk about, you know what I'm saying? Feel like that's not you. And it really wasn't until I matured in my Islam that my words began to change. And I learned more about our own tradition. Okay. When my words began to change. So I transformed as a person first, and then my words began to transform. And subhanAllah, I've written many collections of poetry. Over the years, I've traveled to 5 continents, like Australia, Malaysia, from just in Bartorpa. Yeah, for poetry specifically. Yeah, let's talk that side. Norway, been to like the UK for tours. And a lot of people don't know this now because this was before the real social media boom. It was only a few of us a decade ago that was really doing poetry or a lot. No. But then like when I went to Egypt to study, I went offline and I shut everything down so I could just focus on my studies. So people who know me today really know me from some of our new content. And they go back and they say, "Oh, he's been around for a while." Yeah, but yeah, alhamdulillah, I was able to travel a lot, meet a lot of different people, and alhamdulillah, until this day, I'm still traveling and sharing my poetry in different spaces. I'm really glad. Wow.
It's fun. Before the Islamic poetry and everything, you said you was actually rapping. Was you battle rapping?
Yeah, I mean, like in high school, I dabbled with it. It's funny because um, my house was on the corner, and that's typically where you find people or battles, and even like people selling drugs. And so my father, my mother, they never wanted me on no corner, in crowds of people with big puffy coats on and stuff like that. Um, but sometimes it would be on my corner. It would just trickle in front of our house. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like almost unavoidable. And one particular day, it was like a battle, a cipher on the corner, right? And out of nowhere, this guy comes up. I never seen him before that day. I never seen him after that day. And he does poetry. He does spoken word poetry, right? And he like shut the cipher down. Everybody was blown away. And so that I made a mental note, I would say, in that moment, like, wow, maybe, that spoke to me more, because like we tend, especially as young people, we gravitate towards what's available.
So that one person on the block that did spoken word, that's what like gave you inspiration?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that was a personal connection because they had like this thing called like Deaf Poetry Jab. It was like on BET or MTV or something like that back in the day. It was just poetry though, but any kind of poetry. And so that also resonated with me as a young person. And they had a couple Muslims on there, like Amir Suleiman was on there. Another hijabi sister was on.
It was on there? Something.
Yeah, yeah. Amir Suleiman, Poet, or Amir Suleiman, African American brother. Yeah.
Obviously, basketball, there's a lot of things you could take inside your day-to-day life. For example, teamwork, perseverance, your ability to work hard, to be disciplined, all of these things. How did basketball affect you in a positive way?
That's an excellent question, and super relevant. Uh, And oftentimes parents will come asking, should I let my son play basketball or soccer, organize, he's not going to go to the pros, I want to be a doctor or this or that. And they're not necessarily, uh, the same thing, right? Like, even if you're not aspiring to go to the pros, there's still benefit or could be benefit in playing organized sports for some of the reasons that you just mentioned, strengthening your will, developing your confidence, developing your communication skills. You have to work with a team, time management, right? You got to be on time. If you're on time, if you're not on time, there's going to be consequences to that. So the life skills that are embedded in the game, they uh, transfer off the court. They carry over, as we would say, right, off the court. So um, I would never discourage a parent from keeping their children out of uh, organized sports because of the benefit. Obviously the parent has to evaluate the situation, and they know also the spiritual capacity of their own children. Is it something that's dangerous for their iman? Like they can't operate and function as a Muslim in that space. That's another conversation, right? But no, the benefits are great. My brother and I, in fact, have an organization that he founded called All Ball Basketball and Life Lessons. Yeah. Right. And that's really the foundation of it, is like the life lessons that you attain from the sport. So they carry over into how you function, as a person in this society.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I remember when I was in high school and college, they said that when you graduate, you go to apply for jobs, make sure you put that you play Division I basketball because they want to see that. Because a lot of jobs like to hire people who came from an organization of that was winning, also that was disciplined, that worked hard and strived and struggled to do good. And obviously, you could apply that everywhere. Like, for example, karate, you could martial arts, even writing, poetry. You could use anything of benefit that you do within these sports or activities to benefit you in your day-to-day life.
I mean, life skills in general is very important, and you don't just get those from school. No. There's many ways. Like even like uh, writing poetry helped me write other things. Like I haven't only written uh, poetry books, but I've written curriculums in other subjects. But like my foundation in writing, getting deep into it was really inspired by just the poetry thing. So
Mashallah. So, and then now you graduate college. No, you went to college. You had a high school.
what do you call it? So,
You had mashallah, illustrious career over there.
alhamdulillah.
What? So gets to that, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was really beyond unimaginable. And the pivot again was the decision to do the prep school year that opened the door for me to go to Penn.
No.
And Penn was amazing because they competed with all the Ivy League schools, but they also competed with all the Philadelphia schools. 'Cause it's a part of the Big Five, Philadelphia, which is like St. Joe's. It was number one in the country my freshman year.
Right.
Villanova, they was number one in the country like my junior year.
No.
LaSalle, Temple, and Drexel was a part of the Philly Six, right? So I was going to be able to play high caliber basketball and get a world-class education. So it was like a no-brainer choice. Fast forward, 3 Ivy League championships, right? 2 Ivy League Player of the Year awards, and then 1 Big Five, like all the Philadelphia Player of the Year. So that actually was the springboard to me getting inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in Philadelphia a few years back before I went to Egypt. So that's a little bit, I would say, of just like the basketball accolades. That was the dream come true, you know. And that was, I would say, the highlight of my basketball career, even though I went beyond that and I started to train for your favorite NBA teams. I worked out for uh, Golden State Warriors, the Nets. I worked out for the Cavaliers, the LeBron James Cavaliers, the Kobe Bryant Lakers. I was on their summer league. I was in contract negotiation talks with the Lakers, the Detroit Pistons.
Was you a summer kid?
Summer league, summer league. Houston Rockets, I did their veterans camp.
Yeah.
And so that's like uh right before you get a loss of time contract, basically. So that's the closest you can get.
No.
Yeah. So it was that college career that kind of like put me on the map and got me in the door in some of those places.
I remember you saying there was a NBA team interested in you, and later on you found out that they wanted to draft you. Can you tell us how you found out?
Oh man, you digging deep now, man. So actually, when you after your senior year of college, you put your name in the draft.
Yeah.
I worked out with a lot of teams, in Houston in particular. So I found out later, directly from someone within the organization that they actually wanted to draft me. Uh, but I signed with an agent who had another player at that time at the same position as me, and he was up for contract.
No.
So there was pressure in the agency to put him first over me, which they ultimately did. And they didn't even tell me about the interest that Houston Rockets had in drafting me. I found this out years later when I had already gone overseas, entered into that space, which is a whole nother chapter of my life. And it was so beneficial. Uh, and I content that that was what was the decree for me, because I felt so much more at home, um, more comfortable just in terms of dean and lifestyle. I could go and have like, a double game and then go out the back door, go back to my apartment. I didn't have to do like the, already, pitches and, I just go back into my own world, call home from overseas and stuff like that. So there was a lot less pressure, playing overseas to sort of adopt the lifestyle and be at certain places and involved in certain things. Then, the NBA lifestyle is completely different, So, yeah, found out years later that my agents, did me dirty. I don't know how you translate that. They did me dirty, put me to the side, and they put someone else in front of me. And alhamdulillah, that person, much respected of, they became a, NBA All-Star, uh, NBA champion, and perhaps even a future NBA Hall of Famer. So,
Okay, kind of walk us to the journey of you going overseas after that, trying out.
So something very pivotal happened my senior year of high school. My grandfather, my hero, he also passed away, rahimahullah. And that was like literally around the same time as the draft.
No.
So like it was time for like me to turn a new leaf. You know what I'm saying? Like college, just get the college off me. You know what I mean? That's like the good of what I took was just like um get out of that space, And so going overseas and not being drafted was a great opportunity for me to refocus, recalibrate, redefine myself, Um, and so I didn't get drafted. My agents called me. They said, we got an offer overseas, just like after NBA Summer League and stuff. And, you got 36 hours to make a decision. I'm like, man, you know what I mean? And that's a short window, for something that you've invested the majority of your life in, you know? So I'm sleeping on my mother's couch. You know what I'm saying? I'm living out of bags. I'm like, let's do it. I'm gonna take that check. You know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna make the most of it. Right. Whatever you give me, I'm gonna take advantage of it, right? So I went to Greece, Athens. The budget for my entire team was 600K.
Yes.
Uh, the top teams that we was competing against, every individual on their team made more than our entire team combined. Like nobody got paid that little, right? And we was knocking off teams. I was leading scorer in the league. I was leading in steals. and I was second in assists. Right? Who is this kid? Mind you, my agents just sold me.
Yeah.
All right. Who is this kid? All right. Phone is blowing up. NBA teams is coming to see me overseas to get us another look.
Right.
Right. 30-point games. What's up? Right. So something was going on, behind the scenes. Next thing you know, my contract is getting bought out. Oh, we want you to go to the Euro League.
This your first year.
First year, 4 months.
4 months is
4 months. We in the top 3 in the league. It's on a team that's expected to be at the bottom, right? Rome, playing in the Euro League, traveling across Europe, playing the top teams in the world, second best league after the NBA.
Yeah.
Great opportunity, right? So I take that opportunity. Rome buys my contract. I'm on my second team in 1 year, and not for a bad reason, which is, good. At the same time, they like, man, if we get this kid a European passport, he's going to be like valuable in Europe.
No.
Right? Because, they have limitations. They can only have a certain number of foreigners depending on what league you're in.
No.
But if we can get him to play as a European,
You trying to do that.
they trying to make me a commodity.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, man, but I still got the NBA in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I'm like, I'm going to go so hard right now, right, that you're not going to be able to ignore me no more.
No.
That was my intention, right? When I got to Greece, it was Ramadan. Fasting, praying at night, reading Quran, reviewing Quran, qasas and Nabi, reading the stories of the prophets. Like, I was so locked in. I'd never been that locked in for myself. It was like Morocco times 10. You know what I mean? I felt the benefit outside of the prayer. I felt the benefit outside of recite. It just became like I was a different person.
No.
Right. Laser focus. Right. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't like flinch. I wouldn't blink. Like, every time I stepped on the court, I believed wholeheartedly that we was going to win somehow. Like, that was my approach. And it was really coupled with that spiritual development. Like, you selling yourself short if you're not tapping in, trying to access Allah's help. Right. So I felt the help of Allah, carrying me forward. Boom, 4 months, contract got sold to Rome. I go over to Italy. Right. And then I started playing in the Euro League. We finished the season there as well. Went to the finals and lost in the finals.
But that contract you got sold for was a big contract in your first.
I mean, big, no, not relatively big compared to some of the contracts that I had over the years. My first contract was like $100K.
No.
Right. So I was making 1/6 of what the whole team was making as before.
No.
I mean, $100K is good money.
I know.
Right. It's good money. But then I'm learning like, oh, this person getting 500.
Yeah.
This person getting $1 million. I just had 30 on now. Right. I mean, you know how it goes when you're in that environment, right? Oh, so I'm finding out how much people make.
Yes.
Just so I could tear them down. Like, oh, I'm going, because that's like,
That's the thing.
I'm going like full force at this one so that I could get what he made up. Right. And then I became so popular in Europe within that first year, they offered me the passport to play for the Bulgarian national team.
No.
But at the same time, it's like I'm locking myself into Europe more and more and distancing myself from the NBA more and more, right? The more popular I come over there, my value is going up over there, but I'm not going to have that value if I come back to the NBA, right? I'm going to get league minimum, right? So anyway, finished that year, went to Bulgaria in the summer, competed for like one of the summer qualifications that was like 2 steps before the Olympics. We qualified, right? Went home for a couple of weeks, straight back to Italy because the next season is starting, right? And so I ended up locked up in Europe for like the next 3 years in contracts. NBA wasn't even an option. Even though I was playing the best basketball of my life at that time, I was locked up with the passport. I was locked up because the teams had to pay for the passport. You're right. So I just ended up stuck over there,
Oh.
Um, but again, that was a transformative period in my life. It was self-discovery, breaking old habits, you know what I mean? Creating new habits, making, firm decisions, being a believer for myself, and sort of after a few years in Europe, I mean, Hajj, I got married. I mean, Hajj after a few years in Europe, yeah. So I got married, alhamdulillah, while I was overseas. I got married back in the States, but the arrangement started while I was overseas. Okay. And then that summer I played for the Lakers Summer League. The Lakers were trying to negotiate NBA minimum. No. But I was worth so much in Europe. No. By then,
You really was limit yourself over there.
it was a hard decision. Yeah. And then just being married as well. Do I want to really that to be my space right now? So I felt like going back to Europe for another year was a better fit. And so I ended up at Milan. And then that next year I made Hutch. The next year you made Hutch. After that season I made
And how did you meet your wife?
So family, our families were aware of each other. Yeah. But I had been gone from the community for college and prep school and being overseas that I didn't know who anybody was. You know what I mean? Barely. And again, I didn't grow up in New Jersey, but our families were familiar with each other. My wife actually was, I would say, a fan of my grandfather. She used to visit Phil, and he was actually on his deathbed. He was sick and stuff. And she used to hope that he would do her wedding. Like when she got married, he was the imam that she wanted to do her wedding. It turned out being my father who did it, instead. But you see how Allah works, you know. So when I developed myself as an individual by the help of Allah and the guidance of Allah, and I stopped focusing on getting married, that's actually when I got the call.
Same here.
See, I focusing on, did I focus there? I start focusing on Allah. And the phone call on about science. So I'm like, who's that? Right. It turns out that we was actually in the same space once in our life. Well, years before. And that would actually be the same place we got married in. Years later. Yeah. A lot of irony.
It's a miracle the way things happen down there.
I love the best of planners, and he has his signature on certain things just so you take note, like, look, Allah's working. Kulla yawmin huwa fi sha'n. Every day he's working. And Allah's the best of planners. All right. So, stayed in Europe for another year.
So you back in Milan.
I went to Milan now. So I left Rome. No, and I went to Milan for one more year. We lost in the second rounds of the playoffs. And yeah, amazing stuff that even happened in Rome, just in terms of faith. Like I met people, you never believe this, man. I met a brother Hussein. I know we just kicking it right now. I met a brother Hussein. He used to come to my apartment in Rome and do classes for him. And he was like probably in his 50s, maybe early 60s at that time, right? And I saw myself kind of almost helping him out because he was on hard times. I actually paid him to teach me some Arabic and,
In Rome?
yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm so well.
And we lost contact after I left Rome, after I left Milan. He came to visit us in Milan, but we lost contact. And I was just like, man, maybe he passed away, and then one day I get a call from my father's phone and it's his voice. So I'm like, who is this? I'm like, wait, I had to double tape. Look at the phone. It's my father's phone. I'm thinking my father called him. And he was like, Ibrahim, and he don't even realize he on my father's phone. No. He is in Elizabeth, New Jersey in the masjid. He walks in, goes into the office. He doesn't know who the people are. No. His brother comes to our masjid in Elizabeth, New Jersey. I met this guy where? In Italy. His brother, his cousin or nephew, like literally used to be the mu'adhin when I did khutbah. Like he was my mu'adhin. Like I want him to call it that for me. But my favorite mu'adhin, his brother comes to the masjid. He calls me from my father's phone and he's asking me, do I know where the masjid is at in Elizabeth, New Jersey? On my father's phone. I'm like, yeah. He's like, I'm here, and I go meet him. I'm like, oh my. And we just had this whole moment, you know what I'm saying? Like, I love the best of planners, man. And those are the moments in my life that, I'm really reminded of how involved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in our lives at every moment. So, yeah.
So Milan was the last place you played the full season, right?
Yeah. It was my place. Last full season, I took off the next year to make Hajj
No.
and just take a break from basketball.
How was that experience?
Come on, man. Come on. Hajj was amazing. I feel like I was a baby. I was like still in my early mid 20s, 26, 25, to take that journey as like basically a newlywed, like full blown year, was really amazing. And, it triggers things in you beyond your own perception. So that just made my hunger for knowledge even more, after I went to Hajj, and so like all these years, I feel like I'm developing in different ways, So Hajj was like the crown, like, oh man, ain't no turning back. And if you go by yourself, you went with I like with my wife. Sure. Yeah, yeah. So that was like the crown on my youth. Like ain't no turning back from here, you know? And then it just happened that year was the NBA lockout.
No.
And this is another crazy story. The NBA lockout, uh, the Players Association and all that stuff, they're trying to come to decisions. And during that year, they had a half season. I think it started like winter time or something like that.
No.
So I get a call from the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
The Houston Rockets want me to come to their veterans camp. They want to offer me a contract.
Well,
Whoa, the Houston Rockets, the same team that wanted to draft, the same team that wanted to be drafted.
I had to provide that back. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's so many coincidences. Yeah, that happened in your life.
So when I tell you I heard it from people directly, what happened when I was coming out of college, I'm telling you the truth. They wanted to draft me. They followed me every year, right? And to finally they said, this is an opportunity was going to bring you down, right? And this is other than Allah. This is the decree of Allah, right? So I go to Houston, right? Literally sign a contract. It's a non-guaranteed contract. You have a certain period to prove yourself. You're going to get paid whatever up to that period. And then if you prove yourself, you can unlock another month or 2 months or whatever. And if you make it here, we're going to give you the guaranteed contract.
Well,
So Houston Rockets was involved in a 3-way trade with the Lakers and the Hornets.
no.
And so the Rockets had 18 players on their roster because they was trying to get Chris Paul to the Lakers, right? The Kobe Bryant Lakers, right? The NBA stepped in and vetoed that trade.
I remember that.
Twice. First time in NBA history.
Yes.
Right. So I was a part of that. I was impacted by that. I lost my contract with the Rockets because of that veto. Right. I was with the Rockets for 8 days. Right. But they had to pay me for the full first portion of that contract, even though they could only, because they had 18 players on their on their roster, and they couldn't move them because the NBA vetoed the 3-way trade.
Makes sense.
Me, Jeremy Lin, right, both of us got cut. That's when Lin went to the Knicks, insanity and all that. I don't know. All right. But, that's where my NBA story basically becomes so innate.
No. So you pretty much made it, but is that
We had one exhibition game against the San Antonio Spurs. All right.
Yeah.
But they didn't even play me in that game because they knew they couldn't keep me.
No. Okay.
So it was of no benefit to them.
No.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's dope. Then you end up going back to the last place overseas.
But yeah. So after that, actually, I concluded the rest of the season. I took the whole year off, and then I prepared myself to go back overseas for another year, to Lithuania.
No.
So I was a year out of the game in their books, so my value went down a little bit,
No.
but I ended up on an amazing team.
Yeah.
It's like an amazing team in Lithuania. And, me and my wife went over. She was actually pregnant at the time. My son was born in Lithuania. All right. And it was really a time where, Dean was like really at the center of my life. I said, Howard was the crown, when I went down to Houston, they used to call me Scarf Dad because I used to come in there with the cafe on. Or yeah, that's right. So in the locker room, you know, um, there was a lot of stuff that happened in Houston that uh, made me uncomfortable. Like in the huddle, they would say like the Lord's Prayer. Like everybody, not everybody in here is Christian. Did they ever be able to pray? No, it was like I don't know if you grew up playing football. Like that was a standard that they did before like games. It caught me off guard. I was only there one time to happen, but I didn't even know. I was like, whoa. I had been overseas. I was like, they do this in the NBA, like the Lord's Prayer. So that threw me off. Another person tried to challenge me about my beard. You know what I mean? And so there was like a little tension here and there with certain people in that particular space, uh, as well. Not that, it come with the territory. You know what I mean? You expect those things. Actually at that time in my life, I felt more confident about telling people about Islam. So when they ask you, where you from, I was like, that's not really what you mean. You know what I mean? Like, you really want to know, like, what's my ideology? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's my mindset? Who am I? They don't, but, for some people, your environment is what makes you who you are. Oh, you from the Bronx, or you from Brooklyn, and that's your defining characteristic. But for me, it was my Islam. So that's what they was trying to get at, you know? But yeah, fast forward, go back to Lithuania. Wife is pregnant, about to have my first child. We had the conversation, like, I don't feel comfortable bringing my child into this arena. They got gambling, dancing, music, alcohol, like everything's there. The kiss cam, right? You name it. Even like the music, they didn't even censor it because it was in English, and that wasn't their native language. I used to have on head blocker, earphone blockers to cancel out like what was being said. So I'm like, I don't want to bring my child into this space. Like this, I don't want to introduce him to this environment and to be accountable for that. Like kullu mawludin yuladu ala fitra. Every child is born with a pure nature, and it's the parents who cause that nature to be corrupt. Exactly. So I felt accountable, and I had that conversation with my wife. But if he can't come, then she can't come. You understand what I'm saying? Um, and so we just begin to look at the bigger picture, being a part of that machine. And ultimately, I made a decision to step away from the game. We was competing for top 16 in all of Europe at that time. And it was just like,
And was that your biggest contract?
no, it wasn't my biggest one. My biggest contract was with Milan. But I mean, it was still a significant amount of money. It helped like you could live off.
Sicker, I do.
Yeah, I mean, numbers aren't that important, but I was making a lot of money. I was making a lot of money at that time. Uh, but bigger and more important than the money was just like, what am I part of? How much am I going to be held accountable? Is it enough for me to, just put a sticker over the alcohol logo on my jersey and keep going? Or, you know what I mean? So those are the type of questions that I had for myself. And so basically, I said, let me just step away, and I made a huge decision at that time in my life. Uh, and it wasn't like a absolute decision, like I'm never coming back. I'm never going to revisit it. But once I came back and I hit the ground running and I started working with Muslim youth, and I started, traveling and doing public speaking and performing poetry and stuff like that, I really never, felt like, oh, let me go back. You know what I mean? Or let me go get a contract real quick, um, alhamdulillah. So I never retired. I just stepped away from the game.
There's a hadith that says, if you leave off something you love for the sake of Allah, Allah will replace it with something better. For you, what do you feel was that better that Allah replaced for you?
So I wouldn't say it's one thing. I would say it's a lot of things. The richness of Iman is priceless. It can't be. I don't know. There's no substitute for it.
No.
The clear conscience, not looking over your shoulder, not worrying. am I what I'm doing halal or halal? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's priceless. That contentment, you know, uh, is priceless. Uh, I think the work that I do and have done over the years is far more beneficial. It's been far more impactful when you think about the hereafter. Wow. Yeah, I may have made a lot more money playing basketball. And again, this is a pre-social media. Well, you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, somebody who's a professional basketball player today can have such a great impact on Muslim youth, right? And so there is a place for that, right? And we see it happening with a lot of personalities out there who play professional sports. The youth are very, very impressed by them, but how much of a direct impact are they having? How are they really shaping and cultivating people on the individual level? We don't see that, right? We just see that they inspire, right? But at some point we have to go beyond inspiration, right? And really develop people. So that's the space that I'm is really working to develop young people into Muslims who are proud of their identity. Like they can go to school if they need to pray. They can step away and pray. They can say their whole name. They can talk to somebody confidently about what they believe in. Right? We didn't have that when I was in high school. We didn't have nobody to say, this is how you respond to this. This is how you address this. Right? If I knew today, if I knew then what I know now, right? That's what they say. Yeah. Like, nobody would have been able to like joke on my religion. Oh, your religion is about, oh, you can't eat pork. Or you know how it is, like the petty stuff that people around you out of ignorance say. Right. But what I know now is that they don't even know what they believe. Most of those who making the jokes are just blind funnel. Well, you understand? And is insecurity within themselves. Exactly. I can't. But you don't see that when you're a teenager. You just feel the pressure, of people joking and stuff like that. But having that experience, understanding what young people are going through today in the public schools, post 9/11, post October 7th, understanding that and making an effort to give them a better opportunity to stand up against those pressures. Right. So I feel like there's so much that Allah Ta'ala has gifted me with, you know, as a result of me leaving that behind. Right. But if you were to count the blessings of Allah, you would not really exalt them.
Now that you are not playing basketball, you the youth director here in this masjid, working with the youth. Talk to us about that and how you are able to stay afloat, being the fact that you now have the contract and you're not playing basketball no more. How's entrepreneurship working for you right now?
Don't count the days, as Muhammad Ali used to say, don't count the days, make the days count.
No.
A wise man could do more with the same amount. Right. So we grow up, we learn how to be resourceful. Right. We be seeing our parents make ends meet. Right. Like miracles, right? What we eat tonight, keeping the lights on. So, I mean, yeah, and Allah is a provider. Your risk is written, from before you are born. When you're in the womb, it's already written for you, So, uh, growing in faith, growing in reliance upon Allah always, helps the journey, I won't say that those voices never come back of, what could have been, or, and it would be so much easier if, you know, um, but, this is the test of life, you know, um, definitely, alhamdulillah, I feel like I'm in a good situation as a professional youth worker. Uh, and I feel that I'm well taken care of, first and foremost by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I grind. Yeah, I grind like, somebody who got a 9 to 5, just like that. I grind. I try to work hard. I try to hold myself accountable. Whatever gift for a long time that has given me, I try to use that as well to support my family.
Question, did you go to Egypt during the time you were playing basketball or was it after?
Going to Egypt was actually a decision I made in the midst of my professional youth working career.
Yes.
Uh, I was getting job offers to be a youth director here, a youth director there, because there's a need for it, and it's not like the Muslim community isn't necessarily, up to speed about answering that need. Some communities are really making an effort to bring in professionals, or develop professionals, train people, etc. So with those uh, inquiries, I felt like, man, I need to study more. I need to uh, build myself up even more. I want to learn fluently to speak Arabic. I don't want to try to memorize Quran as much as I can. I want to study the sciences, And at that time, I had about 3 young children as well, and I wanted for them that they learn Arabic, and they grow up in an Islamic environment where hearing Adhan is uh, normal, where uh, Assalamu alaikum, kip halik, just our Islamic identity is normal, So I thought it was a good time to uh, try to make an effort to go somewhere uh, without really knowing where that place would be. No. I knew there was people in Egypt studying. My family had been there. My wife had actually lived there for a year. And so uh, we decided Egypt, and that meant we had to um, set ourselves up to be able to live there. So we actually sold our house. We sold our house, got rid of everything. We had like a little storage, and we got on the plane, 3 kids, and she was pregnant at the time. And we stayed for 3 years, 3.5 years, studied Arabic and completed certain programs over there, worked towards memorizing the Quran and attaining the Jaza, did the Rawat program and the Azhar for like Islamic studies. And then I came back. We came back and we planted ourselves in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and took on the position here. Alhamdulillah. And we haven't looked back.
So that's dope. Appreciate you. Do you think you get kutubas? I had some time about.
Yeah. Not just here, but other places. We have our religious director here. So sometimes when he is traveling out of town or just based on invites to other communities, as well as MSAs as well, I'll deliver kutwas
from time to time. Sean, my beautiful story, man. The last thing now, this is the last part.
Yeah, we got to close, man. Everybody's probably asleep by this point.
Right. So do you consider yourself an African American?
I've never taken on a personal classification.
Yeah.
African American and Black American, Afro American. My father always say he was born before all of those terms exist. But people, tend to define people based on their experiences. All right. So I've had a very universal experience. I always call myself an international citizen, right? Because of traveling the world and moving around even across the United States. But, these titles, my forefathers rejected them. It's like Malcolm taking on the name X, giving up the name Little, So out of respect for my forefathers, I tend not to put labels on myself.
No.
But in terms of my origins, my great grandfather was kidnapped from Mali, West Africa, and he was brought to the Americas and sold into slavery. He was stripped of his Islam. You know how the story goes, and that's why my grandfather had to come back around and embrace Islam and seek and search through the darkness. So I'm of African descent, but also we trace our origins to Arab tribes that had migrated to West Africa. So if anything, I'm Arab African American. If you want to be super technical, but my people first and foremost are the believers, no matter what complexion, no matter what cultural background, language, ethnicity, the believers of one brother, so those are my people first and foremost. But obviously, I'm deeply connected to the Black and African American experiences, and part of who I am is a huge part of who I am. But I tend not to get technical.
Mashallah, tabarakallah, I ain't gonna keep you any longer. Yeah, I mean, we see a fight today where you got Africans and Americans and Blacks all fighting each other. Oh, I'm just American. I'm not from Africa. Or no, I'm not American. I'm just Africans. It's things like that. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, you see, exactly. So the Prophet Islam told us that one of the things that's going to remain in his ummah to the day of judgment, even though you got to uproot it, is nationalism. It's always going to be a problem, but yeah. So, it's sensitive, and a lot of it is just technicalities. But when you go back to the Prophet Islam, sometimes he defined people by their complexion. All right. Sometimes he defined people by language, right? Arabi, Ajami. Ajami was somebody that didn't, a foreigner, but it means that you don't speak Arabic, right? So there's different classifications, and we shouldn't let these classifications uh, drive the discourse too much, because you may take the side of somebody because of complexion, right? Or somebody may be not even on the complexion spectrum, but still identify as Black, right? So there's just so many technicalities, and as Muslims, we have to ascend the technicalities, right? That all of you are the children of Adam. A Black is not better than a white, and a white is not better. A Black Arab is not born better than a non-Arab, and it's not. It's by virtue of taqwa. No.
Thanks one more time for coming. Man, I appreciate you, man. Allah bless and reward you. Please subscribe to the Worldly Life Podcast. Continue to like, subscribe, share, support. Just had a dope episode with this brother. Appreciate you. May Allah bless and reward you. And we out of here. Don't get your funny up. Get your deen up.